I rejoice in my sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not disappoint. Hope. What is it?
134th and Western. This is an extremely violent, this is a killer tornado. And like
Where
I
is
said
it?
earlier, if you're not below ground, you will not survive.
I discovered hope through a storm.
Ari, my daughter, she was always one to stick up for the underdog and always try to, mediate the situation.
Like, we used to do some crazy things as kids, and she was the one to, point out the things that could happen and the things that, the consequences.
I had had a hernia operation. They went in looking for something else and found a hernia and said that I would never father a child. And that was at the age of 16, and I never thought another thing of it, after that. Married twice before her, no children, plenty of girlfriends, no children, so.
And that's all Shelley kept saying is, oh, he's such a good guy. He's such a good guy with kids. He just loved kids. And it's like, I don't care. I just need an electrician.
First week I went out, we were required to go to AA meetings. And I went to this meeting. I'm sitting there. And across the room was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen before in my life. And after the meeting, I walked up to her. I said, would you like to go out and get a cup of coffee? And she looked me square in the eye. She said, I want absolutely nothing to do with men. And I thought to myself, this sober thing is not going to be very easy picking up girls.
She came to me on Halloween night, dark, stormy Halloween night, weeping, crying, yeah, I'm pregnant. What's going on? We hadn't even told each other we loved each other. We'd only been together a very short
And my
period
due
of time.
date's 666. My first due date.
Yeah, so we go in and we get, they spin the little dial to tell you when the kid's gonna be born, and it says, June 6, 2006, and we're like,
What?
we name him Damien, or what's going on here?
Yeah, and no, it was just crazy.
and luckily she was a month off.
She was also very fearful, little girl. She was scared of everything. She, lived in the same house, all her life, and she still wouldn't go into a room by herself. Probably slept with me all her life, except a few occasions when she slept in the room with someone else, but always ended up in my room, in the middle, every night of her life, pretty much. Well, her favorite verse was Psalm 56:3, which is, what time I'm afraid I will trust in thee. And that was something, Moses and I had taught her just because she was always scared and she knew it and she would recite it, but yeah, she was just always scared.
We'd been talking to each other on the phone, and one night she was dating a friend of mine, and I said, what you need to do is quit dating him and go out on a date with me. And we dated 7 nights in a row. And on the 7th night, I told her I loved her and that I want to marry her. And she said, I love you too, and I want to marry you too.
And then we were living together by September. And in November, we went to the doctor and found out I was 8 weeks pregnant.
And when I told my parents, my mom and my dad just they just flipped out, Didn't think they would ever get a grandson.
They thought that we were coming over to tell them that we were going to get married, and we said, oh yeah, that too.
Yeah, that too, yes.
That's not the major news.
We were in a really good place in our marriage, in our life. We were in one of the best places we had been in a long time.
We had a decent car. We had a little bit of money in the bank. My life consisted of going to work, coming home at 4, eating a wonderful dinner that my wife had cooked for me, going out in front, sitting in my chair and watching my kids ride their bicycles. And I enjoyed that. We did that every day. And then the two of us would put the kids to bed. She taught the kids during the day and I worked. It was a simple life, but we learned to be content.
So that's how the whole story began. I just wanted an electrician, and I now have an electrician.
I just went over to do a job. And
Once a month there's a youth rally with our church, and at the end there's an altar call. Moses went up and started praying with her. It was like 2 hours. They were up there praying at the altar. I wish I would have asked like more details about. I truly think God was preparing them, and so yeah, for the next day. Ari had begged to stay home with her grandma because she was sick and she wanted to stay home, but I didn't let her.
So we got in the car and we started driving, and it started hailing, and it was getting really crazy, and she got kind of scared. I remember saying, like, "You're a scaredy cat," like, not thinking much of it. And I think I was gonna sing that night with one of my friends, and I was waiting for her to get to church, but we always have to ask the pastor before service starts, and I was wondering where he was, and I was walking around, and he was out in the back, like the very back of the church, and he had the door wide open. I kind of looked out there and was like, "What are you looking at?" And the tornado was in the parking lot. I grabbed my 2 younger sisters, Ari and Audrey, in my hands and just ran with them where everybody else was running to the nursery. And all I remember right then is just like the building just like fell down, and like it was like a blackout moment, like you fell asleep and then you like woke up for a second. My mom, I remember her screaming each of our names to see like hear us respond, and Ari was the only one who didn't respond, and my dad was right by her. He had like all of us were on our backs or on our stomachs or something, and he tried standing up and holding the building. One of the guys who was helping people get out, like I asked him, I was like, "I want my sister, like I want her now, and like what is wrong?" And like freaking out, and he had told me like it's okay, and we're gonna take her to a hospital. And I like, of course I wanted her, and finally like once we were all out, we all sat there, they gave her to me, and like of course I didn't want to think that at the time, but she was dead, and like I could have sworn I felt her pulse when I put my hand to her neck, but I didn't. They said that she had gone instantly. Months went by, and around November, December, I really thought like I don't like God, like I hate you right now, like, like why would you, what kind of God are you? Why would you do that, Like, how could you let one of your children go through something like that and like hurt me so bad? Why'd you take them away? And For like almost the whole year of the first year, I felt like he wasn't there at all.
We had a pretty good idea, a good feel for it as early as May 15th. The upper air data kept giving indication that we had chances of severe thunderstorms and a few tornadoes. So we knew a long time out this was going to happen.
I was meeting with Pastor Earp and some others. It was after church. We were getting together in the afternoon. And I started hearing the weather reports coming in and seeing the clouds. And my wife called me several times, said, I want you to come home. And I'm like, oh, it's nowhere near us. And sure enough, it was on us. Came through here and then also went out east, Cleveland County. A lot of homes, a lot of people's lives were affected.
2 F4s went through Kearney and edge of Shawnee at Bethel Acres. And I already had 82 people set up in Shawnee by 9 o'clock the next morning. And I came back to Oklahoma City just for a few hours and then ran into the storm.
I was actually really concerned that night just because of the area and the direction and the path. I was pretty scared the night before. After everything had cleared, then we were looking at the weather, and they predicted the next day was going to be worse.
Violent tornadoes coming up tomorrow.
The morning of May 20th, I was continuing to work on a bathroom project. I was trying to frame out a mirror with trim and add some cabinets, open cabinets in between her.
Something she'd seen on Pinterest,
yeah.
You know. And she's like, Chase, I want to do this. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. So I dropped Liam off at school, and then I took a trip to Lowe's, and then came back to Liam's school because it was their awards morning. So I got there just in time to watch the class before him get all their awards, and then his class got to go up and get all of their awards. And I went back home to continue my project. I was slowly running out of scraps of trim to use, and I was really frustrated. I kept saying to myself, ugh, if I had only rented that table saw.
Val, go ahead.
Yes, I am.
Go ahead. What do you have?
We've got a developing wall cloud with a strong rotation straight north of us.
Very first storm of the day that got big first went up down near Duncan. So we went down, I would say about 4 miles or so north of Lindsay, and stopped and kept noticing this other big storm back to our north. And so we hightailed it back up to Moore and got there just in the nick of time.
As you're watching it, it was almost like it was in fast motion. And there's wall clouds there, and then that little ribbon just went away, and then boom, classic Oklahoma, typical Oklahoma tornado came down, just like a funnel. And there it is. Radar shows a hook echo. You could see real time this thing just grow. I mean, usually they grow, but you don't see it like this. This thing started moving this way, and the thunderstorm widened out. And as the thunderstorm widened out, the base of the thunderstorm just started lowering, which is not a good sign. And it didn't take long until we knew, and I knew, that this was going to be another bad one.
When she called, I being the husband, I had to be the calm one and downplay it to some degree. And I wish I wouldn't have. I wish I would have got in the car and gone home, but I didn't. And I regret that, not being there when it hit.
It's not uncommon for parents to check their kids out for bad weather. When I came out of my office, there was a line of parents out front.
There was a huge crash of thunder. I mean, like, made you duck just because it was that loud. And that's when all the kids started getting upset.
Mrs. Marinelli, my teacher, went out in the hallway, and we heard the sirens go off. And then she came back in, we went in the hallway and covered our heads.
This is a critical situation, very dangerous. Do not get caught in your car in this. But keep in mind, beneath an overpass or underpass is not a good idea because the winds will increase.
As it came across 44, and they predicted the path, and they laid the red arrow down on the map, My house was under that red arrow.
134th and Western is an extremely violent, this is a killer tornado.
And I'm out front with my neighbor, and we're filming the tornado and looking at the clouds and thinking that it's coming to us. And then my neighbor and I and his friend and my kids, we get down into the storm cellar and we close it in and wait for it to come.
We stopped near 149th and Penn and watched the tornado out to our west as it was coming towards us. And we sat there. It was a good spot to sit there and watch and report from. And it ended up going about 1/4 of a mile north of our location.
And I grabbed Noah, our 2-year-old, forgot to grab shoes for him, and I grabbed our emergency bag, I shoved us all in the car, and I drove down to the house, a couple houses down, where the shelter was at the Smith's house. And opened the shelter door, and there's Grandma Smith and the 2 girls that live at the house. One of the little girls is in Liam's class. And I kind of look straight at her and I go, should I have left Liam at school? Maybe I should have gotten him. But I was like, it's too late, it's coming. Whatever's coming is coming. And I got in the shelter with the dogs and got us all set up. And I was still thinking about it. I was still thinking about running to the school. I was like, I should just run to the school.
So I was concerned. I've got all these guys sitting on Highway 9. Are they going to get hit? Got all my equipment out there. Are they going to get hit? Will I have enough people to handle our needs? We knew we were going to be needed.
As parents came in and it was still traveling towards us, they were in a panic.
And the hail starts getting pretty bad, and everything stops. And then it just gets really quiet outside. The man opens the door again, and for a brief moment, I look to the west, and it's just completely pitch black.
Started coming down 35, and I'm listening to the radio, and I called my dad. He said, Dad, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. They said the tornado's gonna directly hit the house. And my dad's never been a person to not have that comforting word. He's always had the right word to say. And he said, son, I don't know what to say to you.
I was hearing a lot of wind, I heard that, and I heard some thunder. I thought I got picked up by the tornado, but it wasn't.
And we're sitting in the darkness. And it starts to get louder and louder. And I start shaking.
And as the freight train noise starts, things start hitting the top of the shelter. And I keep thinking, okay, this is it. And it just gets louder, and it gets louder, and then our ears start to pop.
And I wanted to be strong for my kids. I'm supposed to be the strong one. And my oldest daughter, she puts her hand on my hand. And I couldn't go any longer with not praying.
I'm thinking my son's in that school. And so I just prayed. I just kept saying out loud, God, please protect the children. God, please save my son. Please protect my son. Please save the children. And that's all I could say. And I was just screaming it over and over, just trying to block out the noise.
You can't believe it's happening. You think, there's no way. I've grown up here my whole life. I've never heard these sounds. You hear about it, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen to you. And I think instinctively all of us just thought, we've got to cover these kids. And you knew from the first hit, because we were down on the west side of the building, so we were the first part of the building to get hit. You just knew, because everything was falling apart. And I literally just squeezed my eyes shut as tight as I could, and I buried myself on top of those kids. And I didn't look up for a second.
Now it has just grown into a massive tornado again.
Guys, as you're tracking this, we got to tell you, a school down in Moore. We know a school in Moore has been hit, an elementary school.
We're also getting word that some kids may be trapped.
The vent holes that the air went through got sucked off when we started getting showered with debris. And we all just screamed and huddled into the middle of the storm shelter. Not only that, the door was shaking so much that one of the men got up to try to hold it down because all that was holding it was just a little latch, basically. And I'd say within 20 seconds, we could look up in the vent holes and we saw the stuff swirling. And we knew it was safe to come out when we couldn't see any more stuff swirling in the air.
The wall fell down, and it was immediately just so crushing of a feeling. I mean, I immediately thought, we're gone, we're gonna die. It was immediate. I just kept praying, you know, just please keep us safe, please, like, help me to breathe. And I kept trying to calm myself down because, you know, you can't even move. So I just continuously prayed that we would make it through, the weight of the wall wouldn't come down anymore.
And when that door was opened, my first view was of the school. And there was cars on top of it. The car alarms were going off. I looked back and I saw the tornado still behind me. And for some reason, I think because I wanted my husband, I took a quick video. It wasn't for me, it was for him because I wanted him to be there with me.
We waited a few minutes before the men opened the door back up, and they just stood there staring at the damage. And I just start nicely saying, guys, I need to get out of the shelter. I've got to go get my son. And they're just standing there still. I go, guys, I have to get my son. Please move.
We immediately heard some squawk on the radios how bad it was, and then everything went down. And phones were almost impossible to get through. And then as soon as that storm hit, it was just lack of communications.
I look up, and there's no houses in the way from the school, and there's no school. It's not there anymore.
I have no idea how people got to that school so fast. We're talking 60 seconds later. You know, we're on the scene, and I hear screaming and crying from underneath the car.
Traffic was a nightmare. I-35 was pretty much shut down. We were getting places on side roads and on crossing highways and around in the dirt just like every other first responder. And we initially went to the movie theater, and I had seen a lot of devastation before. In '99, I'd seen some devastation in the service, but this was just incredible.
I've seen tsunamis, earthquakes, hurricanes, and I've seen all of that, but we live in Oklahoma and we have on a regular basis F4s and F5s. And there's nothing as destructive like an F5 tornado. It reduces the rubble to about 2-foot chunks of wood.
We saw on the TV that they were showing that schools just demolished, you know, but they weren't saying what the school was, but they were talking about how bad this was, and just looking at it, I could tell this is not good, and they weren't saying what school this was, so I knew I had to go.
We knew there were children missing. Well, when you have children missing in rubble, you know it's not going to be good news.
And I went on to the school, and there was just a big pile of rubble. You hear the kids crying, and I seen a group of them over by the creek. So I went over there and I looked for Nicholas over there.
I went to go check on my kids again, and I just said, y'all doing okay? Yeah, Mommy, and we can hear the screams. Go to the school and help them.
We tried to move our bodies. We tried to move stuff off of our heads. I mean, we couldn't move. We were packed solid in there.
And I get there and I start hearing two men yelling at each other. you know, and then I start hearing the kids underneath crying, and then I hear the voice of a teacher underneath there as well. And I'm thinking, oh Lord, I can't do this.
I know that while things were being lifted off of me and they started pulling things in front of me, that they were pulling the kids out from under me. I couldn't see the kids. I couldn't do anything because my head was turned to the side and there was junk everywhere. And then all of a sudden, I was out. There's kids sitting on the rafters at the front part of the east end of the front building and yelling for help, and people are running to them to go pull kids out. And I'm screaming Liam's name. I'm asking anyone that comes by me, you know, where are the little kids? I don't see any little kids. Can you guys tell me where the little kids are? Where are the first graders?
Some of my deputies were involved in setting up the morgue, setting up the identification of the kids. And so my thoughts that day were, man, there's a bunch of parents down there that either don't know their children are passed or do. And they're going to be hurting. And so that kind of really strikes a real deep chord with me. And it frustrates me because I can't reach out to them then. And it frustrates me because if I could reach out to them then, it wouldn't help.
I went back to where they were digging the kids out. And I kept waiting and I kept waiting. And finally the first responders told us that they taped off the area, told us that we had to, leave that area. So I found a hot water tank sitting out behind the school. And I went and sat down on it.
Just knowing that I've got my deputies down there dealing with these children that have passed and that I've got these parents out there that are experiencing the greatest horror that they could ever imagine. And that kind of grips you and makes you want to do something else. It makes you want to do more. It makes you want to make sure everybody's okay, and you know you can't make that happen.
I got to the front of the school and there's a group of kids standing there, and I see Liam's kindergarten teacher standing there, and I see a bigger boy kind of move out of the way, and I see Liam. And I just I took a deep breath and I just yelled his name and rushed to him and picked him up. I mean, that's all I could do was say, thank God.
I sit on that hot water tank. I seen them pull a little boy out.
But you don't know for sure that was Nicholas.
I know it was him. He was the only one that small. He was the only one that had short hair and was that small. And they pulled him out. And I waited. And I waited. And I never seen his treasure come out.
I get a text from Micah that said everything's gone. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if that meant my kids were gone.
Well, then they made us leave, go down to the church.
That was the longest night
of my life.
That was a living hell.
We heard it on the radio, and then I just started bawling at first. Because of the parents, I know what they're getting ready to go through and walk through, and we were just all kind of in shock, and we knew we had to come help.
They ended up putting me on the top of this Jeep, just laying the board across the top of the hood of the Jeep, and they each held the ends of it while he drove slowly to get to where the ambulances were. I just remember staring at the sky and thinking, this is insane. I can't believe this has all happened. I don't know how else to explain it, except it doesn't feel real.
As I ran up the street, the closer I got, of course there was houses standing as I'm running through the neighborhood. And when I made the last corner and I saw, and it was just leveled. of course, I'm just running and running and running. And when I make the final corner right there at Plaza Towers, and I look down the street, and her and the kids were standing there in the street. I said, we're good. Everything's gonna be just fine. And it's kind of funny. We were still probably 200 feet from each other, and I'm just walking then. My body's like, no, you're not running no more. Adrenaline's cut off. You saw her, she's good. You're walking from this point on.
I don't know why I felt this way, but I instead of letting myself just like run to him and like and show outwardly how I felt, for whatever reason, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna be tough, you know, and I just remember walking across the street like I'm trying to walk normal, and I'm trying to act normal, like this is all okay, we're okay, you know, and it was just walking up, and I was so proud of my wife, you know, she was there, and the kids were there, and even the dogs, you know, and she had that darn cat in that box, and he made it too, you know.
I said, Mike, you know, we need to go into our house. And as we're walking in, we went through the garage, and the water's pouring down from the top story because it had ripped all the water lines loose, so it's flooding down. Of course, we're stepping over debris, and wood is just stuck into the wall like toothpicks. All the furniture had been blown up against one wall. It had just taken everything from the house and piled it all the way to the ceiling. And I opened the closet door and I laughed. It was totally untouched. And we're kind of absorbing that and having some joy there for a moment that, hey, we've got something. We can keep this. And there's a knock at the door. And
I'm thinking, who's gonna knock on our door right now? You know,
like, just come on in, dude. There ain't nothing to secure this house. Just come on in. And it was two guys in their early 20s, and they walk in and they said, do you have any linens that we can use? And I was like, what you got going on? He said, well, the kids from across the street, there's nothing to wrap these kids up in. And we're just going up and down the street seeing what linens there are available to wrap these kids up in. Well, I'm standing in a room that's got bed linens, all of our towels were in our closet, washcloths, everything, we had it. We're looking at it, we're like, take it. Take it all.
Tied the dogs up. I got them kind of settled and got the kids settled, and start looking around the property, and I'm thinking, okay, I should probably take some pictures. So I snap a few pictures of the house, and I'm looking at the sidewalk, and I had one of those very bizarre moments that I'm staring straight. I'm like, what is that? And I'm looking at a table saw in our yard, and I just start laughing. I'm laughing hysterically, and the neighbors across the way from us, they go, hey, I think you got our shop. I'm like, well, I definitely have your table saw over here. And I go, you won't believe what I was praying for this morning.
It was deep into the night and into the wee hours of the next day that I finally went home after facing the 7 families and listening as the chaplain told them that they needed to write down anything they knew about their kids as far as what they were wearing that day and birthmarks and stuff. Nothing was confirmed for me or the families until the next morning when the ME's office contacted them. That was a long night for everybody.
Anytime we hear of a disaster, that they're predicting bad weather, predicting some storm coming, we're already packed. We're ready to go. In disaster relief, we're trained to have our bag packed, ready to go.
And we have a national conference call the next day at 1 o'clock. And I just said, guys, I need something we've never done before as a whole. I said, I need skid steer teams and track hoe teams to come. Don't need a lot of guys, but we need heavy equipment. I said, we've got 4,000 homes on the ground, and we need to move this debris because even when a person loses their home, if you hire that, it's going to be between $4,000 and $8,000 per home to have that debris moved. And we believe we saved homeowners between $5 to $7 million. And so we're trying to save them that money so they could put that money back into recovering.
We did a lot of ministry around the area of Plaza Towers, especially the first week. We had a lot of families from our church that lived close to Plaza Towers Elementary. We didn't have a great organized effort in the beginning because everybody was scrambling to find friends and family. So what our involvement looked like as a church in the beginning was, first we had some people who were preparing food for relief workers and things like that. That's the way it was for at least a week.
I was asking around, has anybody talked to Miss Marinelli? Where is she? What's going on? And I went up to Miss Tosher and I go, do you know anything about Miss Marinelli? And she looked at me and she goes, don't you know? I just go, no what? She starts telling us, well, Miss Marinelli saved your son. She saved those boys that she had. All the teachers in the halls that day had thrown themselves over what students they had remaining. And Miss Marinelli happened to have the 3 smallest boys left in her class. And she was able to wrap herself completely around them.
After they pulled her out, and while they had her at the hospital, all she wanted to know was, are my boys okay? And she hadn't heard anything, and of course we didn't know that she had been injured. We knew it was a miracle that he was okay. We didn't know how that was possible.
We immediately went up to OU Medical Center where she was at the hospital.
And as soon as they opened the door, I knew that they knew that he was with me, that he was under me, because I don't even think Elise said a word. I mean, she just burst into tears and ran over to me and hugged me and basically just told me to thank you for saving her baby.
We just kept telling her, you're a hero. You're our absolute hero, and thank you.
It was obvious that we were immediately bonded for life.
All I could think about was how could I pay this woman back for what she'd done? You can't repay somebody for saving your child's life. That's a priceless gift. You get that gift from God, and then God gave us another miracle when he gave us her.
Chaplain Kathy and I were called together to work grief. And so we were back there waiting, and all of a sudden someone came and got us and said, we think we have a couple families that are out in the lobby. Scott was just weeping, and he kept repeating this one phrase over and over again. It was my only son. It was my only son.
When we walked in that day, Chaplain Bunny was there, and she said, I'm here to walk with you. And I said, I'm not walking right now, I'm crawling. So she literally fell to her knees and said that she would crawl with me.
And we fell down to our knees, and she just sobbed in my arms. They let us back into that room, and that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship.
So we get to Oklahoma, we get the address to where we're supposed to meet up, and that was my first time being back in it, our first time being back in it. And even though it was 2 years later, it kind of just all hit you. You could see anything on TV and it's never the same.
It was like 2 weeks before, a week or two before I actually walked up to I just walked up to the school just because.
I started walking the fence of where the school was, Plaza Towers, and I was just standing at the fence, and eventually I met up with the guy. Well, he was walking by too.
She asked me if I lost somebody, and I said, yes, I lost my son. And then she told me she was from Joplin, and she had lost her daughter
I was actually right beside her when she had met Scott McCabe. And I didn't say anything, but I just kind of stood behind and like cried with them. And he hugged each of us.
I asked about the pain. Does it go away? She couldn't answer me that.
We'd gone for a service that Elevate Church, of which I'm a part, held there. And Stephen Earp spoke, and Mr. McCabe was there. I just walked up to him, shook his hand. I said, I'm Rep Burnett, this is who I am. We're in the same club. I lost a daughter to cancer. Here's my card, here's my phone number. Call me. I said, in the middle of the night, call me. Because the middle of the night for me is when I struggle sometimes. And so, he didn't know me from Adam, just another bald guy. He didn't know me. But I encouraged him, and I encouraged him before we left. I said, listen, brother, I mean it. I mean it. Please call me if you need to talk, because the situation's different, but the damage is the same.
As things started to come together for us, I had a little more time to actually commit to doing something else. So I volunteered my massage services for a day up there, and so I took my table up and set up shop and brought a friend of mine who also does therapy.
The day was like kind of hot, and it was really, really windy, and the sun wasn't out as much as usual. And so we were just planning for the day, setting up, when Liam's family showed up, and Liam was just sitting there, and he was looking at the skies, and he kept asking, like, where's the sun, where's the sun? And then it just started to get more windier, and blow harder, and things were falling off the tables. And so he began to freak out.
It was the spot of the most kind of terrifying part of his life up until this point.
As I watched him from the distance, I began to think back when the summer of our tornado, when we freaked out a lot, and there was a lot of storms that came afterwards, and the winds that made lots of noises that scared us.
So she took a couple art projects into the car, and Liam's our little artist, so she got him talking, and she got him to start loosening up and drawing.
I just began to talk to him and say, what's your favorite thing to do? And he pulled out his book, and it had sharks on it, and he was just saying how he loved sharks, and he loved to look at them, he loved to watch movies about sharks. We began to talk about a little bit of his story of what he wanted to tell me, and how he came through the tornado, and like sooner or later, we got out of the car, and we come and sat back down for a while.
A 14-year-old tornado survivor from Missouri is using her story to counsel young storm victims and more.
And even though it's been 2 years since the Joplin tornadoes, for Kayla, coming here and seeing the devastation all across Moore was still overwhelming for her.
And says every time she tells her story to survivors, it helps in her healing process.
And as we began to pray, the building was hit and fell to pieces, and we were underneath for about an hour, I think. And my dad was holding the building as much as he could with the strength he had. While everyone was laying down. He held it until everybody escaped underneath by being dug out. And when he heard that everybody had gone out of the building, he took his last breath. What he didn't forget to tell us that he loved us. And when I got out, little did we know that one of the sisters I had grabbed didn't make it either. It was good to know that she went as soon as the church was hit, whenever I got to talk to a lot of the people that were hurting deep and show them like my side of the story and what I've gone through and where I stand now. And at moments like that, I wondered like what my dad was thinking. I think about it a lot. Like, what does he think now? Am I becoming what he imagined me to be? Am I the person he wants me to be?
Just to watch that 15-year-old girl minister to people, to see joy on that girl's face when she lost loved ones. And you could say all we lost was our home compared to that. And she was a great example for us not to let this consume us.
She understands what it means to hurt. She understands what it means to lose something. You don't see any bitterness. You don't see any anger. You see a lot of love.
There was a house that I had watched be tore down and stuff, and there was like a family that kept coming back and forth, and then finally we had this story night. That's where I finally got to like hear their story completely.
Went off and played college football. Didn't do very well at college. Making decisions, just kind of came unglued real quick. Lasted about 10 weeks. Started drinking almost on a nightly basis and ended up going home.
From about 14 to 21, I was in and out of drug treatment centers. I was homeless at one time. My mom had kicked me out a few times. And I had also had 3 abortions. The first one was when I was 15. And I was awake. That's something I'll never forget. And I held the nurse's hand because it was painful. Counselors didn't prepare me for that. And I went further into drugs and alcohol.
I was angry. I was mad at God, angry with life, just selfish and immature, and I was lost.
At 19, I had my second. And this time I chose to be asleep. I had already tried suicide once when I was 17. And I had to get my stomach pumped. And I was about at the point of committing suicide again because I just couldn't live anymore. I was back at my parents' house and I knew that they were gonna throw me out again because I just couldn't get my life under control. And that's when I started going to AA because I thought I gotta do something. When I met James, he bought me my first Bible and I started reading it, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. It fascinated me. But there was a small problem. I had had 3 abortions. And I knew what Christians thought about that.
In October of 2003, my wife sat me down one night and she said, "Honey, I love you, but you're using drugs and I won't have our daughter around that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take Selah and I'm gonna go to Texas and you can get yourself put back together. And when you're back together, I'll come back."
He had really struggled because he just kept on beating himself up over and over again. He was inadequate, he was a failure, he was this, he was that, and just believing all those lies.
I wanted to go through almost like an inventory, like a 4-step, and confess each and everything I could ever think of to God and ask him to forgive me of it. And I started writing, and writing, and writing, and writing, and just pouring tears. I wanted a fresh start. I wanted a new beginning.
It took me almost 3 years to fully come to a place where I had peace with my past. And it really was a moment in time for me where I realized that I had forgiven myself. And I was in the kitchen doing the dishes, and it was raining. And out my kitchen, I could see the windowsill of the other windows in the house. And perched up underneath were 3 sparrows nestled together. And I smiled because I thought of my 3 children in heaven, rather than beating myself up for what I had done. He made me free from my guilt and my shame. And I feel like God's calling me to speak to women about that. And I began to.
Nicholas was always buying people extras with his money. And we would say, you know, your parents don't give you that money, so you can spend it on somebody else, almost, you know, weekly. Eventually we just stopped because Nicholas was going to do it and we were going to allow it. But he had a big heart for people around him.
The day that they told us that Nicholas had passed, that he was doing that he was sharing his food and he was taking his money and his extras up there and sharing with everybody else. It wasn't like he was hoarding it or whatever.
He wasn't doing it for himself. He was doing it for somebody else, others.
Well, then when we went to the other school to go get the little replica of the cross, we found out that the little girl that he was giving those pepperonis to was Janae. And her cross is right next to him right now.
I'll always be proud of him. Always.
He had the best spirit.
Yes.
He had so much love, so much joy.
I can remember just being really angry at God, just being really angry. You know, how dare you do this again? First my mom, and now my child. How dare you do this again? I deserve, and that's silly, I deserve a break.
It is not the natural order of events for a parent to lose a child. There is no way to compare the depths of grief and pain that can cause. I think it's like entering into a dark night of a storm and not knowing if you'll ever come out.
That forced me into that place where, for the first time in my life, being somebody that was always able to control his surroundings, always able to control being by himself as a child while his dad worked, always being able to control his environment. Finally, God handed me something that I had no control over. And I felt helpless, and I felt defeated, and I felt like a lousy father because I couldn't fix that. So you just start doing what you do. You just start praying and believing, and don't let your kids see your fear.
I knew better, but I also wanted to be mad at somebody, something. It's pain. It's laying alone at night crying, nothing but me and God. And you literally, can't explain it unless you've felt him literally wrap his arms around you.
Our pastor, lives with a constant reminder of going through struggle with his wife and her debilitating disease.
And people only want to talk to him when they're having issues.
Oh yeah, being a pastor in general, he hears it all,
Around 2007, some things took the wind out of our sails a little bit. We're doing life, we're doing ministry, we're doing business. And my wife had been experiencing some strange physical symptoms that were not normal. So by July of 2007, which was definitely 2007 was the hardest year I've ever been through. She was diagnosed with a terrible chronic illness that ended up putting her in bed for 4 months. And that wasn't part of the plan. That wasn't part of our big idea of how we saw things turning out.
One day I was having a really, really hard day, and I had to walk away. And I'd walked way around the other side of the fence, around this other side of the school, and I'm just sitting there saying, my God, this hurts. And Nicholas said, Mommy, I'm okay. And I said, Nicholas, I know you're okay. It's Mommy that's not okay. I'm not okay. I can't ask God why.
I don't know that I ever specifically asked the question why. My thought at the time was, because of this, God's going to do something amazing in me and in her and in the lives of my kids. What are my kids going to learn about life? As they watch me, their dad, walk through hardship. I want my kids 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. I want my kids to look back and say, Dad walked through that well. I want them to look back and say, Dad made some tough calls and he walked through some hard times. And I know I can get through this because he went through that. I have the conviction that our kids learn the most about God as their Heavenly Father. I think they learn the most from the way their relationship is with their earthly father. And I think that I have the opportunity to teach them about what God is like if I walk through hard times and overcome.
I just remember a time, like with Ari, when I was pregnant, I had a lot of problems and they didn't think I'd carry, and we prayed hard and God was there. And I remember after she passed away, I was just questioning God, why didn't you just take her then, And he said, he just told me she's no less your daughter than she was my daughter when she was here with you.
For me, overcoming doesn't mean to not struggle, but I think it just means to walk through a struggle with integrity, trusting God even when I don't know the answer to the question why.
gave me a child. He gave me a son. I was told when I was 16 I couldn't have kids. And I went through life thinking the same thing, thinking that. And then, you know, all of a sudden, wham. So it had to be, you know, a spiritual thing. I didn't know that at the time, or did not recognize it at the time, but it had to be. Because it's the one and only time it ever happened. So he was put here on this earth so I could be a father.
We have talked about that we would like to be foster parents.
Yes.
I think God has put that in our hearts because He knows that
I still have a lot of love.
We have a lot of love.
There are kids out there that don't get love. And that might be our calling. I know, we just don't know yet.
Another one of my favorite memories with my dad is when, even when he was tired and would just get off work, he'd like drive by the house and be like, get in, and I'd hop in the front seat with him and he'd just take me around the neighborhood, and he would like talk to me one-on-one, like he'd ask me questions, and it just like he was interested. And you just feel more special when you have that one-on-one relationship with your parent, because you don't usually get that when you're with all your siblings. But that was like our time. So, yeah.
The fatherhood of God is one of the most clear pictures we have of what God is like. Protection, holding your hand during the hard times, giving you comfort.
I can't explain it my worst time. I've also felt the best, most intimate times with God. He really is there, and He is not just somewhere in the atmosphere. He is here. He's hugging me. He's comforting. He's holding my broken, shattered heart, you know?
Okay, so I'm 16 years old. I'm walking up the sidewalk to my house, and I heard a voice in my house. I mean, it was kind of freaky. My dad's with me, and it was very clear someone was in our house. And I remember very clearly one of the most impressive memories I have about my dad was him taking his arm, and I'm 16 years old. I'm growing. You know what I mean? I'm trying to become a man. And I remember my dad very distinctly putting his arm in front of me, pushing me back, and walking ahead of me towards the source of whatever potential problem was there. So when I think about where is God when I'm going through hard times, I think of this. He's there. He's walking with us through it. He's ahead of us.
He's holding our hand because He knows that He's already been there.
Yeah.
And He's telling us that it's okay. That He's going to help us get through this. And we're going to come out better people.
Reality is, none of us know really what it's like to lose a child except someone who's lost a child. So I don't know what Scott and Stacy are experiencing. I don't know the depths of their pain, but our Heavenly Father knows exactly what they're going through. And if you were to ask me, where was God when young Nicholas passed away? I would say God was in the same place that he was when his own son passed away. Offering comfort to those around. So yeah, as our Father, he understands.
I actually had a semi-good time at work today. I mean, I felt better at work today than I have in a long time. It just hit me. It just... I don't know how to explain it. But I told Nicholas that I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna go on. And I'm gonna make it work. And I'm gonna do what the Lord wants me to. What he'll have me do. I don't know what that is, but I'm gonna find out.
I wrote on a shirt for Scott a prayer, and he would wear it and show me. And then Stacy came up a little later, not the same day, but in time, like Stacy would start coming up, and I wrote her a prayer shirt too, and she would come up excited, wear it, and you know, we prayed over that, we cried over that shirt, and it was and just in the background, that was my prayer for them to just to come to him. And because it's a hopeless situation, but God's the only thing that can like bring hope out of the hopelessness of losing a child.
I want to have a closer relationship with the Lord. My son didn't get the chance because we didn't give it to him. And now he's giving me the chance. I went to the church and Stephen, he said, with everybody's head bowed, if you'd like to come to Christ, if you want to know Christ, then lift your head up and raise your hand. And I did. And I didn't say anything to anybody.
He didn't say anything to anybody.
She
I said, did you not think you should tell me? Or he said, I thought you would know. I said, no, I had my head down and bowed like I was supposed to. I think that's something that needs to be shared between married people if that happens.
I didn't know. It's all new to me.
You know, I finished up that list, and I just started reading through the Romans Road over and over and over. And I got to the verse and it said, but God commended his love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at that list and I'm just shaking my head. I said, why? Why do you love me? No matter what I had ever done. And then he wanted to save me. I got down on my knees and I prayed. And I asked him to come into my heart. And I've never doubted. Since then, I've had some struggles, but I've learned to be dependent upon Christ. When I'm dependent upon James, I fall flat on my face. And I've just learned to depend on the Lord and realize I'm a weak man.
But after the tornado, complete strangers coming, they didn't have a preconceived notion. They loved us because that's what Christ tells us to do. And to experience that, God knew I needed that part of my faith restored.
You know, for Chase, he's been on this journey, and his transformation has just been inspiring. And he's really stepped up to the plate as far as a leader in our faith and in our family.
I'm raising this child, and I'm, you know, if this is somehow a lie, I don't want to lie to him. I don't want to have him believe something that's not real, you know. I want him to understand and learn and find his belief for himself. If I didn't have the faith, how could I give it to him? And that was the tough part. There are things I can't explain, but I've seen things that I can't explain that do point to God.
Straight to him.
And we've witnessed a lot of that through this event.
Now we've got the Moody's moving in next door to us, and they're in ways similar, like just some of their personality quirks are similar, and they're really great people too. And so it was just like our circle of friends and our family through this experience has exploded, and it's been awesome.
To form a relationship with someone because of a tragedy, going through this tornado together, and then for us to go through the next few chapters in tornado seasons with them next door to us.
That's comfort.
I can't even tell you how comforting that is.
Did we know them before?
No.
And guess where they're gonna move?
They're gonna move right by our new house.
They're building right next to us, huh?
Mhm.
So he's got a new best friend right next door already. Wow. Yeah.
And really, since the tornado has happened, my perception of my father has changed so drastically. I have a relationship with him. It's real. He's just special. Loves me.
I still question. I'm still angry. And Steve pointed out to me last night that even Jesus Christ asked why. So it's not wrong to ask why.
We know that we're all going to see Nicholas. And if that was the purpose of my son's death, for his daddy to be able to be with him for eternity, then it was worth it. It was worth every bit of it.
Yes.
There is not a single thing that we could ever go through that our Heavenly Father does not understand. And there is not a single dark place that He has not already walked. And He walked there so that we could know Him, so that we could have a relationship with Him.
He knew that we're the parents that Nicholas was supposed to have. So if he entrusted us with that, then we have to be obedient to what else he will entrust us with. And I, for one, want to show the world that he is a loving God. That there is hope when there is no hope.
she had a dream to be a missionary in Africa, and you don't just, like a little kid, I don't even remember what age she started with it. You don't just come up with that off the top of your head. Like, I know you placed that in her, God. Where else did she get it? You took her, she didn't get to do anything that she didn't get to fulfill that dream. And her story's been told in Africa now, her fear story, and she's not here in the way she thought she was gonna go to Africa, but her story's been told, her heart's been there. And I wanna put my feet on the soil in honor of her, and I know that my other kids do too.
To know that my dad would be proud of me is, it's like a great relief. It's something that helps me to move forward. I don't have to have anybody tell me that he'd probably be proud of me, because whenever I think back to how he was and some of his characteristics of when he would help people out no matter who they were, and how I'm doing that now, I feel like that's something he would have done. And if that's something he would have done, he must be proud.
I can imagine seeing Nicholas and my father both standing there waiting on me.
He's gonna be so excited to see us.
Yes.
But the very first thing that he's gonna show us is Jesus.
Yes.
And then he's gonna go show us everybody that's there.
God has a big plan, and you can only see so much of it. And you have no idea what the big picture is. There are some rough spots in his plan. And you just have to learn to live with it at the moment. That's why it's so hard to understand him at the moment. But if we wait and hold on, he is really trying to say there's something so much bigger than you can imagine in what I have for you. I'm not asking you to understand why I'm doing it. But if you just sit here and wait, I've got you, and you'll see.
He takes all the pieces that are shattered, blown up, and he puts them together in such a beautiful, special, perfect way.